The city of Lahore was unrecognizable. Once a sprawling heartbeat of life and laughter, now it was a skeleton of burning steel and crumbling concrete. The night sky glowed crimson, not with sunsets but with the eerie pulse of alien warships drifting above the clouds. Silent, predatory, patient. The air tasted like rust and ash. Every few seconds the faint echo of plasma fire rolled across the horizon, like thunder that had forgotten its place in heaven. Sergeant Ryan Hale crouched behind the shattered hull of an abandoned transport truck, breathing through the cracked filter of his mask. His pulse synced with the soft hum of the rifle pressed to his chest, a relic of human engineering already obsolete against the kind of energy weapons the invaders used. Around him the street was lined with bodies, some human, some not. The non-human corpses looked disturbingly familiar, vaguely humanoid, pale skin glowing faintly as though something still moved beneath it. The soldiers had started calling them the Bleeders. No one knew their true name, only that they drank. For weeks rumors had circulated, aliens that didn't just consume energy or biomass but blood. The government had laughed it off, then disappeared within days. The skies split open not long after, and cities around the globe went dark. Ryan's unit had been wiped out 2 nights ago. He'd watched his captain torn apart by something that moved faster than bullets, something that smiled while it killed. Since then, survival wasn't a mission. It was an instinct. But tonight was different. The alien fleet above the clouds wasn't firing. No bombardments, no energy storms, no movement at all. Just hovering, waiting. It felt wrong, like the universe had taken a breath and refused to exhale. Ryan checked his comm. Dead static. His body ached from exhaustion. His mind screamed to find cover, to hide until morning. But there was a pull, something in the stillness that drew him forward. Down the main boulevard toward the heart of the city. The deeper he went, the stranger it became. Buildings hung half-destroyed, yet lights flickered inside them as though something or someone was rebuilding. The power grid was supposed to be gone. The alien craft overhead gave no sound, no light. Yet for the first time in weeks, Ryan felt warmth against his cheek. A faint, living heat carried by the wind. He turned the corner and froze. There, standing amidst the ruins of a fountain that once sang in the city square, was a woman. She didn't look human. Her skin was almost luminescent, a marble white that reflected the scattered embers in the air. Her hair was black with a metallic shimmer, floating slightly as if gravity had less hold on her. Her eyes, her eyes were not red like the others. They were violet, deep and strange, like they held galaxies within. She wasn't armed, but Ryan could sense power coiled in her every movement, quiet but infinite. For a second, his mind screamed that this was a trap, another bleeder, another monster pretending to be human to lure the desperate. But something about her presence was still. There was no hostility radiating from her. In fact, she looked lonely. Ryan aimed his rifle, slow, steady. "Don't move." She tilted her head slightly, her voice soft, almost musical. "You're still alive." "Barely," he muttered. Her lips curved into something resembling a smile. "Then you're a miracle." He didn't lower the gun. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same," she said, stepping closer, her bare feet silent on the broken marble. "You're human." "You shouldn't be this far inside the quarantine zone." Ryan blinked. "Quarantine zone?" She studied him, eyes narrowing slightly. "You really don't know." "I know your people have been killing mine for months," he said, voice tight. "And that you're standing in the middle of a graveyard pretending that's not true." Her expression softened, almost with sorrow. "Not my people." The words carried weight. Something behind them trembled. Ryan's fingers stayed on the trigger, but his arms were growing tired. The faint wind shifted, carrying her scent, strangely cold like rain on steel. "Who are you?" he asked. "Does it matter?" "I need to know if I'm going to die in the next 5 seconds," Ryan replied flatly. That earned a quiet laugh from her. "If I wanted you dead, soldier, you'd already be dust." He hated how calm she sounded and how right she probably was. She moved closer again and he didn't fire. He couldn't. There was a faint hum in the air around her, like energy displacing itself to avoid touching her directly. Then, without warning, she extended her hand. Ryan flinched. His body screamed a step back. But her gesture wasn't aggressive, it was oddly Human, a handshake, or something like it. What's that supposed to mean? He asked, suspicious. In your culture, she said softly, it's called trust. He hesitated. And in yours? Her gaze flickered with faint amusement. In mine, it's a challenge. Between equals. Ryan let out a shaky breath. Equal. That word meant nothing anymore. Not when her kind could tear through tanks like paper, but something in the way she said it. No arrogance, no threat, made him slowly lower the rifle. He stared at her open hand. His gloves were torn, his knuckles bruised and bloodied, but he reached out anyway. When their hands met, it wasn't a handshake. It was a fist bump. Her fingers curled lightly against his, and in that instant something like an electric pulse surged through the air. The world seemed to blur for a heartbeat. The hovering ships above flickered, lights dimming briefly as if reacting to the contact. Ryan pulled back instinctively, gripping his hand. What the hell? Her eyes widened. For the first time, the calm shattered. She looked at him like he'd just broken a law of nature. You, she whispered. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Ryan stammered. You're the one glowing. Indeed, a faint ripple of violet light spread across her skin, fading as quickly as it came. She stepped back, staring at her palm, then at him. No human has ever... She trailed off, disbelief flickering across her face. Before he could speak again, the air above them trembled. The alien fleet that had been silent for hours suddenly roared to life, engines igniting in synchronized fury. The cloud split open as beams of crimson light lanced toward the ground. Ryan dove for cover, but the woman didn't move. She simply raised her hand and the beams stopped midair, frozen like glass shards caught in time. Ryan's eyes widened. How are you doing that? She didn't answer. Her expression turned dark, conflicted. Then she whispered something in a language he didn't understand, something ancient and filled with pain. The crimson beams twisted, reversed course, and vanished back into the clouds. Silence fell again, and then she turned to him. You shouldn't have touched me. Ryan swallowed hard. Pretty sure you started it. Her lips twitched. A flicker of amusement passed across her face, quickly buried beneath something heavier. You don't understand what you've done. He glanced up at the sky. Yeah, I'm getting that impression. The fleets, she murmured, eyes distant. They're bound to me now. They think I've... Returned, he frowned. Returned? Her gaze met his, steady and cold. You touched me, human. That mark on your skin, she nodded toward his hand, is an ancient bond sign. You've invoked a right reserved for the blood thrones. My kind will see it as succession. Ryan looked down. His knuckles faintly glowed with the same violet light that had danced across her skin. Succession, as in leadership? As in you've just made me their empress, she said bitterly. He blinked. By one fist bumping you? Yes, she said. Congratulations, soldier. You've stopped the war. Her tone made it sound like he'd also doomed the galaxy. Ryan ran a hand through his dusty hair, staring at her in disbelief. This has to be some kind of joke. I wish it were. She stepped closer, her voice low. Now listen carefully. Every hunter, every fleet commander, every bloodlord in orbit will know within minutes. They'll come for you because you carry my seal now. They'll either worship you, her violet eyes burned faintly, or kill you. Ryan's throat went dry. And you? I haven't decided yet. The air shivered again. Above them, the clouds began to move. Dozens, no hundreds, of red streaks descended from the sky. Dropships, soldiers, the invasion resuming. She turned to face them, her voice a whisper laced with centuries of command. Run, human, before they see us together. Not without you. She looked at him sharply. You'd die for me already? He met her eyes. No, I just don't like leaving people behind. Even the ones who can stop lasers with their hands. For the first time, her expression softened, just slightly. Something human flickered behind those alien eyes. Then she nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Very well, she said. Then you'll need to learn to survive the night, soldier. Because after tonight, she looked at the descending storm of ships, her voice trembling with something ancient and sad. The galaxy will know her empress has returned, and that she walks beside a human. The streets burned behind them as they ran, not with fire in the usual sense, but with light, an alien crimson shimmer that devoured everything it touched. The sky above Lahore had turned into a maelstrom of descending craft, their silhouettes stretching like shadows of gods across the ruined skyline. Ryan's boots pounded the cracked pavement, his lungs on fire. Every few seconds, a shockwave rippled through the air, making his bones vibrate. Beside him, the alien woman moved like a ghost, her steps silent, her breathing steady, eyes scanning the skyline with that unsettling calm of someone who had seen too many wars. They cut through alleyways littered with broken vehicles and abandoned market stalls. Somewhere a child cried, but the sound vanished as the crimson light washed over that street. The invasion had resumed, only this time it was targeted. They weren't glassing the planet anymore. They were hunting. "They're not shooting at random," Ryan said between breaths. "They're tracking us." "They're tracking me," she corrected quietly. "And by extension, you." "Right," he muttered. "Great, so no pressure." A faint, humorless smile touched her lips. "If you die now, humanity's last act of defiance will end with a handshake." He shot her a look. "Fist bump." "Whatever primitive ritual it was," she said dryly, "it bound my throne to your pulse." Ryan stopped running for a moment, panting, bracing against a half-collapsed wall. "You keep saying that like it means something. You're telling me your entire species obeys you now because I touched your hand?" Her gaze turned distant, almost wistful. "Not exactly. The bond recognizes power and will, not blood alone. I was not meant to ascend. My sister was the rightful heir to the blood throne." He frowned. "What happened to her?" "She died," she said simply, though her voice wavered for the first time. "Or so I thought." Ryan looked away, unsure what to say. He'd seen soldiers talk like that before, the ones who carried grief heavier than their gear. The silence between them hung thick, broken only by the low hum of ships circling overhead. "Finally," he said, "so if your people think you're their empress now, can't you just tell them to stop the invasion?" "I could," she admitted, "but it wouldn't matter. The Council controls the fleets now. They've been waiting centuries for an excuse to burn this planet. They'll claim I've been corrupted by human contact." Ryan exhaled, frustrated. "So what's the plan?" She turned her violet gaze on him, and for a moment he swore he saw stars reflected in her pupils. "We find a way off this world, before the Council sends its ascendants." "Ascendants?" "Assassins," she said simply. "Elders bound to protect the bloodline's purity. They'll come to confirm my identity. And kill you." "Charming." She started walking again, weaving through the ruins. "You still have time to run, human." "You owe me nothing," he followed, shaking his head. "You really don't know us, do you?" "I've studied your species for centuries," she replied. "I know you're violent, impulsive, stubborn." "Yeah," he interrupted, "but we don't walk away when someone's in trouble." Her expression softened slightly. "That's not a trait. That's a flaw." "Maybe," he said, "but it's kept us alive this long." They reached what had once been a metro tunnel entrance. The stairs were half collapsed, but the lower levels seemed intact. She gestured toward the darkness. "We'll be safer underground." Ryan flicked on his flashlight, the beam slicing through dust and decay. As they descended, the city's chaos dimmed into silence. The tunnel smelled of damp concrete and burnt ozone. Rats scurried past, the last living creatures left to bear witness. In the faint light, he finally got a clearer look at her. Her skin shimmered faintly, veins glowing with an inner luminescence that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Her clothing, if it could be called that, was torn ceremonial armor, black and silver, etched with strange runes that occasionally flickered to life. "So," Ryan said carefully, "you never told me your name." She paused mid-step. "Names have power among my kind." "Then give me one that doesn't," he said. "Something I can call you that won't summon cosmic assassins." Her lips curved faintly. "You may call me Saris." "Saris," he repeated. "All right. Nice to meet you, Your Majesty." She shot him a sharp look. Don't what?" "Use that title. It draws energy. Words carry resonance." "Okay, noted," he said, raising his hands. "No royal titles." "Got it." They reached the maintenance level, a vast chamber lined with old power conduits and flickering emergency lights. Ryan found a corner behind a row of pipes and set down his rifle. For a few seconds, neither spoke. The only sound was dripping water and the distant rumble of alien engines above. Then Saris broke the silence. "That mark on your hand, does it hurt?" Ryan looked at his knuckles. The faint violet glow had faded, but when he flexed his fingers, the skin tingled. "Not really. It's just warm, like static." She stepped closer, eyes fixed on his hand. "May I?" He hesitated, then nodded. She took his wrist gently, her touch impossibly cold. When her fingers brushed the glowing mark, a ripple of energy passed between them. Ryan flinched. Images flashed across his mind. Planets of black stone, rivers of light, thrones carved from bone and crystal. He gasped and pulled back. What the hell was that? Memory, she whispered. The bond is connecting our minds. You saw fragments of my bloodline's past. Every empress carries it, he rubbed his temples. Next time a little warning would be great. I needed to be sure, she said quietly. You're not supposed to survive the connection. It's meant for my kind alone. He looked up at her, incredulous. You're saying I should be dead? By all logic, yes. But logic rarely applies to humans. He gave a dry laugh. I'll take that as a compliment. Something like a smile ghosted across her face, and for a brief second she looked almost human. You are strange creatures, she murmured. You burn yourselves to light the way for others. Even when the fire consumes you. Rian leaned back against the wall, watching her. You sound like you admire that. I don't, she said, though her tone betrayed her. I envy it. Before he could respond, the tunnel lights flickered. Then came the sound, faint at first, then growing louder. A chorus of whispers echoing through the metal corridors. Cirrus's expression hardened instantly. They've found us, Ryan grabbed his rifle. The Ascendants? No, scavengers, she said. Your kind, he frowned. Humans? A figure emerged from the far end of the tunnel, ragged, armed, and wild-eyed. More followed, maybe a dozen, their weapons aimed squarely at the newcomers. Survivors. But these weren't soldiers. They were desperate. Hold it right there, one of them shouted. Drop your weapon. Ryan lowered his gun slightly but didn't drop it. Easy. We're not your enemies. The man squinted, then looked at Cirrus. His expression shifted from suspicion to fear. What the hell is that? She's with me, Ryan said. She's one of them. Another scavenger shouted. I've seen their kind drain men dry. She's not attacking, is she? Ryan snapped. The group hesitated. Fear and exhaustion made them unpredictable. Then one man raised his rifle and fired. The shot hit Cirrus square in the chest. Ryan shouted, but before he could move, the bullet stopped mid-air, inches from her body. It hung there, spinning, melting, and disintegrating into ash. The temperature in the tunnel dropped sharply. Cirrus's eyes glowed violet, brighter than before. You shouldn't have done that. Cirrus, wait. Ryan stepped in front of her, hands up. They're scared, not evil. Her voice was ice. Fear does not absolve bloodlust. He met her gaze. Neither does power. For a tense moment, everything stood still. Then the glow faded from her eyes. The bullet dust scattered on the floor. The scavengers backed away, terrified but alive. Cirrus turned and walked deeper into the tunnel, her voice trembling. You're the first human who's ever stood between me and death. Ryan followed silently. And probably the dumbest. No, she said, almost whispering. The bravest. They disappeared into the dark, the echoes of chaos fading behind them. Above, the alien fleets shifted formation, awaiting orders that would never come, because their new empress was walking beneath the earth beside a human soldier, whose heart had already begun to change the course of galaxies. They moved for hours through the forgotten underworld of the city, the labyrinth of metro lines, maintenance corridors, and water channels that once carried life beneath Lahore. Now it was a grave. The distant rumble of the alien fleet thundered above them, like a heartbeat of something vast and angry. Ryan's flashlight flickered as the battery drained. Shadows lengthened on the curved tunnel walls, bending around them like they were alive. The smell of dust and metal filled the air, occasionally broken by the faint sweetness of rot. He had learned to stop reacting to the small noises, the skitter of rats, the drip of condensation, but there was one sound he could never ignore. The quiet hum that came from Cirrus whenever she walked too close. It wasn't sound in the human sense. It was more like the whisper of static that pressed softly against his skin, reminding him she was not of this world. Her light footsteps made no sound on the damp concrete, and her eyes glowed faintly, casting a violet hue on the tunnel walls. They hadn't spoken in a while. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it was heavy, as though both were afraid to disturb something ancient and listening. When they reached an old maintenance chamber, Ryan finally broke the quiet. You said your people think you're their empress now. But if your sister was the true heir, Cirrus paused, her face unreadable in the dim light. You want to know why she died? Yeah, Ryan said carefully. You sound like you still feel her shadow. She's not a shadow, Sarah said softly. She's a memory carved into the bones of my kind. We're bound to our predecessors, their lives, their choices, their regrets, all carried in the bloodline's pulse. Ryan frowned. You mean literally? Like you remember what they did? Her gaze turned distant. Not memories, echoes, feelings that never fade. Every empress inherits the weight of the last one's sins. She stepped closer to the broken console in the room and brushed her fingers over the dust. The screen flickered faintly, reacting to her touch. Human technology trembling before something older. My sister's reign ended in fire. She was consumed by her hunger, by what your kind would call thirst. The more she drank, the stronger she became, until she tried to ascend beyond flesh. And it killed her, Rian guessed. It turned her into something worse than death. Saris murmured, a consciousness without form. They say her spirit still drifts between the stars, whispering to those who dare claim her throne. Ryan leaned against the wall. So you think she's... What, still out there? I don't think, Sarah said quietly. I know, he studied her face. You've heard her? Saris's voice dropped to a whisper. Since the moment you touched me. Ryan froze. What do you mean? When our bond formed, she said, turning to him, I felt her stir. Her memory moved through my veins like fire. I thought it was just the power of the Empress returning, but now I'm not sure. Ryan rubbed his temple. So your dead sister might be aware that a human just accidentally crowned you? She might see it as blasphemy, Sarah said. Or as opportunity, he exhaled. Well, that's comforting. She tilted her head, almost smiling. You're remarkably calm for someone entangled in a galactic bloodline. Lady, I've been fighting your people for weeks, Rian said, deadpan. At this point, cosmic possession is just another Tuesday. Saris let out a breath that might have been a laugh, soft, quick, and gone too soon. But then her expression changed again, tightening. The bond between us, it's evolving faster than I expected. Ryan blinked. Meaning? She approached him slowly, raising her hand. May I? Last time you asked that, my brain played a slideshow of your ancestors, he muttered. This time I'll be gentle. He hesitated, then nodded. She placed her fingers over his chest right above his heart. The air seemed to hold its breath. Ryan felt it immediately, the warmth spreading outward from where she touched him. His heartbeat slowed, not painfully, but with a strange sense of synchronization. For a moment he saw flashes again, but not of her past. Of his own. Childhood laughter, military drills, the screams of comrades, and all of it spiraling through her eyes. She gasped, stepping back. What was that? She whispered. You tell me, Ryan said, his voice shaky. Saris's eyes were wide, the violet light inside them flickering wildly. It's not supposed to work that way. I shouldn't be able to see you, he gave a small, uneasy grin. Guess we broke more than a few rules with that fist bump. Saris turned away, pacing. You're altering the bond. You're feeding into it somehow. I didn't do anything. You exist, she said sharply. That's enough. Her tone wasn't angry but fearful. Ryan didn't press further. He just sank down onto a cold steel pipe, feeling the exhaustion hit him again. After a long silence, she spoke more quietly. In my people's myths, there was a prophecy. A mortal would one day touch the blood of the Empress and survive. They said his heart would burn brighter than the sun's, that he would awaken what our kind had lost. Ryan raised an eyebrow. And what did your kind lose? Her gaze softened. Mercy. They stared at each other for a long time, two species bound by an accident neither fully understood. Then Ryan broke the tension with a wry smile. So, no pressure then? None at all, she replied, but her voice trembled faintly. Outside, the faint rumble of the alien fleet shifted. The noise grew sharper and closer. A deep, resonant sound like a bell made of thunder rolled across the earth. Sarah stiffened instantly. They've found us again, she whispered. How? We're underground! They're not tracking movement. They're tracking the bond. Between us? Ryan said. You mean they can feel it? She nodded grimly. Every ship, every commander. They can sense their Empress's pulse. They're coming for me. Ryan grabbed his rifle. Then we moved, but Saris didn't follow. She stood very still, her head tilted upward as though listening to something he couldn't hear. Saris? Her lips moved. She's speaking, Ryan frowned. Who? My sister, her voice broke. She's calling my name. Ryan froze as Saris's eyes flared with pure light. The air around her shimmered and the walls of the tunnel groaned like the earth itself was in pain. He tried to reach her, but a wave of invisible force hurled him backward. Sparks burst from the ceiling pipes. The light around her grew until it filled the chamber, and then a voice echoed cold and vast from everywhere at once. Little sister. Ryan staggered up, his ears ringing. The voice wasn't sound. It was vibration, emotion, memory. It cut through the air like lightning. Saris trembled, clutching her head. Impossible, she whispered. You're gone. Gone? No, you carry me. You always have. Ryan took a step forward. Saris. She looked at him with eyes no longer violet but black. Pitch darkness bleeding through light. Her voice layered with another tone, one that wasn't hers. She's inside me. The walls cracked. Dust rained down. Ryan didn't think. He ran to her, grabbing her shoulders. Fight it! I can't. You can, he shouted. You're not her puppet. You're not your blood. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Then Saris gasped, and the darkness flickered out of her eyes. The light dimmed. She fell against him, trembling, her breath ragged. I held her back, she whispered. Ryan steadied her. Then do it again if you have to. She looked up at him, tears shining faintly in her alien eyes. You don't understand. Every time I fight her, she learns more about you. He swallowed. Then we stay one step ahead. Saris nodded weakly. We'll have to leave Earth, Ryan frowned. Leave Earth? How? There's a ship buried under the old observatory. Human scientists captured it decades ago. I can reactivate it, but, her gaze darkened. It requires blood. Mine and yours. He gave a short, grim nod. If it gets us off this rock, then I'm in. She stared at him for a long moment, then said softly, You don't even know what you're agreeing to. Ryan managed a tired smile. You'll just have to trust me, He stopped himself. Saris. For the first time she smiled without restraint. It was small, fragile, but real. Then she whispered, Let's go awaken the stars. And as they vanished into the dark, the ancient echo of a dead empress whispered through the tunnels. Her voice filled with hunger and prophecy. The blood remembers, and it will not be denied. The mountains were silent except for the hum of the wind. Above them, the sky still glowed faintly crimson as if Earth's atmosphere had not yet healed from the wound the Sangui invasion tore into it. The once proud peaks of the Karakoram had become a wasteland of ash and glass. Their glaciers melted to rivers of blood-tinged water. Somewhere amid that desolation, Leon followed Liara toward an ancient observatory, a relic from before humanity had ever dreamed of reaching the stars. It stood like a broken crown on the mountainside, domed roof half collapsed, telescopes twisted into skeletal fingers reaching for the heavens. The soldiers used to call it the Eye of God. The Sangui called it the Observatory of the Damned. For Leon, it was just another ruin. Liara moved with silent grace, her silver hair catching faint glimmers of light from the burning clouds. She hadn't spoken since they left the safe house 2 nights ago. Leon kept his rifle slung and his distance longer. Something about her had changed since the fist bump. The connection between them pulsed faintly in his thoughts, a quiet rhythm that matched his heartbeat, like a second soul whispering inside his chest. When they reached the shattered gate, Liara stopped. We are here. Leon looked around the empty courtyard. This place looks dead. It was built for watching stars, she said. Now it watches ghosts. Her voice carried that strange echo again, a trace of sadness that felt too human. She stepped inside, her boots making no sound on the cracked stone. The interior was colder, darker, yet strangely preserved. Holographic panels still flickered along the walls, showing star charts mixed with Sangui script. Leon brushed his hand across one of the consoles. You people were here before the war? Liara nodded faintly. Long before. We studied your world, monitored your sun. Your species grew faster than expected. We wondered if you would ever notice the watchers in your sky. He gave a half smile. Guess we finally did. Too late, she murmured. Leon stopped beside her. Why bring me here? She turned toward the shattered telescope. Because this is where the first tear opened. The veil that connects our world to yours began here in this mountain, and it's where I can still close it, if I am strong enough. And if you're not, Then your world ends in 7 rotations. Leon swallowed hard. So why me? You could have come here alone. Her gaze flickered toward him unreadable. Because the veil no longer obeys me. When you touched me, you altered the bond. You carry my essence now, human. My strength flows through you. And perhaps my weakness, Leon shook his head. You're saying that little fist bump made me part alien? Not alien, she said softly. Linked. He stared at her for a long moment. The wind moaned through the broken dome above, scattering snow like ashes. So what happens if we close it? I die, she said simply. The words hit harder than gunfire. Wait, what? You said you could fix this. I can, she replied calmly. But I was never meant to exist in 2 worlds. The veil feeds on energy, on blood. Closing it requires sacrifice. My father opened it through death. It must end the same way. Leon clenched his fists. You can't just, there has to be another way. Liara smiled faintly. You humans always believe in another way. That is why I chose you. The moment stretched thick with unspoken truths. Leon wanted to hate her for what her kind had done, for every soldier and family lost. But looking into her eyes now, he didn't see a monster. He saw someone just as trapped as he was. Someone trying to atone for the sins of a dying empire. Then, from deep below the observatory, came a low, metallic growl. The lights flickered. Liara's expression hardened instantly. They found us, she whispered. Leon raised his rifle. Who? The Praetorians. My father's royal guard. They protect the throne, and the secret of my blood. Before Leon could reply, the floor cracked open with a deafening roar. 3 towering figures rose from the depths. Armored Sangui warriors with obsidian helmets and wings that shimmered like black glass. Their weapons pulsed with crimson fire. Liara's voice grew sharp, ancient. Stand down. I am your empress. One of the Praetorians lifted its spear, the red glow bathing her face. You forfeited the throne when you bonded with immortal. Leon barely had time to react before the creature lunged. He rolled aside, firing bursts of plasma that ricocheted harmlessly off the Praetorian's armor. Liara moved like lightning, claws slicing through the air, deflecting blows meant for him. The fight was chaos, stone shattering, energy bolts slicing the dark. Leon caught one Praetorian across the throat with a lucky shot, staggering it, but the others pressed forward. Liara unleashed a scream that wasn't human, a wave of pure energy that shook the observatory's dome. Then, just as one of the warriors raised its spear toward her heart, Leon moved without thinking. He dove between them, the blade grazing his shoulder. Pain tore through him, and with it something else. The pulse. The bond flared like lightning. Leon's veins burned silver, his eyes flashing for an instant with violet light. The Praetorian hesitated, confused. Liara gasped as she felt the surge. Leon, stop. You're channeling my blood. He didn't understand how, but he moved faster, hit harder. Every motion guided by something beyond him. The rifle became an extension of his will, each shot glowing white-hot. In seconds, the last Praetorian fell, armor melting into ash. When silence returned, Leon fell to his knees, gasping. What the hell was that? Liara knelt beside him, her face pale. The Empress's mark, she whispered. It has awakened. He looked at her, confused and terrified. You mean the thing that happened when I touched you? Yes, she said. The fist bump, the bond. You carry part of my soul now, Leon Hayes, and that means... Before she could finish, a faint rumble shook the mountain. The telescope above began to hum with power. Liara's eyes widened. They activated the failsafe. The observatory is collapsing. Leon staggered to his feet. Then let's move. They ran through the corridors as the structure crumbled around them, ancient machinery detonating in bursts of red light. As they reached the exit, Liara turned back once, gazing up at the glowing dome. The observatory of the damned, she said quietly. My father built it to watch the birth of empires. Now it will witness their end. Leon grabbed her arm. Not yet. As long as we're breathing, it's not over. They burst out into the freezing night just as the mountain roared and the observatory collapsed in a blinding crimson explosion. The shockwave threw them both into the snow, shards of stone raining down around them. When the light faded, Leon looked up at the burning sky. The veil was pulsing again, larger, hungrier. Liara rose slowly, clutching her side. It's begun. The veil knows who holds my mark now. Leon met her gaze, breath misting in the cold air. Then I guess the galaxy just declared war on me. Liara's lips curved faintly. On both of us. And as the burning remnants of the observatory faded behind them, the two fugitives vanished into the bleeding dawn. A human soldier and a fallen empress bound by something neither fully understood, running from gods and monsters alike. Dawn came slow, painted in bruised gold across the shattered mountains. Smoke from the ruins of the observatory curled into the clouds like dying prayers. Leon hadn't slept. His shoulder burned where the Praetorian's spear had grazed him. But it wasn't the wound that scared him. It was the silence inside his head. For days, he'd grown used to hearing Liara's faint presence through the bond, like a second heartbeat echoing in the distance. Now it felt louder, heavier, like two voices breathing through one soul. Liara knelt by a frozen stream, washing black ash from her pale hands. The water hissed faintly when it touched her skin. She looked exhausted, more fragile than he'd ever seen her, yet there was something fierce in her eyes, the kind of strength born from centuries of loss. Leon broke the silence. You said I carry your mark. What does that actually mean? She didn't turn. It means your blood is no longer entirely your own. He frowned. That's supposed to make me feel better? Your wound, she said quietly. It should have killed you. The spear was laced with necrotic venom, yet you lived. Do you know why? Leon shook his head. Because when you bled, she said, I bled with you. The bond took your pain and split it between us, he blinked. You mean we share injuries? We share everything, Liara said, finally facing him. Pain, strength, dreams. The mark is not a symbol, Leon, it's a covenant. A sanguine oath that binds two souls until one ceases to exist. The words sat heavy between them. Leon didn't know whether to feel honored or horrified. So if I die, he said slowly. You die too? Not immediately, she said. But part of me will. Enough to make me wish I hadn't lived. Leon laughed bitterly. Great, so I'm basically your ticking time bomb. She didn't answer. Her gaze drifted toward the horizon where faint streaks of fire marked the descent of sanguine ships. They're hunting you now. The mark makes you a threat to the throne. I thought you were the throne, he said. I was, she replied softly, until I touched you. The way she said it, not as regret but as quiet acceptance, sent a chill down his spine. They moved through the mountain passes in silence, avoiding drones and patrols. As they descended into the valley below, Leon felt his senses sharpen unnaturally. He could see farther, hear the faint hum of alien engines miles away. Once, when a sniper drone fired from the ridge, he reacted before thought, caught the pulse bolt midair with his rifle, redirected it into the snow. When the echo faded, Liara was staring at him. You're adapting faster than I expected. Adapting to what? To me, she said. He looked at his hands, trembling slightly, veins faintly silver in the morning light. You're saying I'm turning into one of you? Not entirely, she said. But the line between human and sanguine grows thinner with every breath we share. He exhaled slowly. And what happens when it disappears? She hesitated. Then the covenant becomes irreversible. You will be mine, and I will be yours, Leon froze. The words carried more weight than any weapon. You mean like bonded, she interrupted, her tone unreadable. In sanguine tradition, the blood covenant is sacred. Only emperors and their chosen consorts share it. Consorts, he echoed, his voice dry. So you're saying I'm married to the Galactic Empress? A flicker of amusement crossed her face. By your human customs, perhaps, though I doubt your priest would understand. He wanted to laugh, but the truth beneath her words was too sharp. The galaxy wasn't just hunting him for being human anymore. It was hunting him because he was bound to its lost ruler. By noon they reached the valley floor. The remnants of an old observatory outpost lay there, half buried under snow. A bunker filled with rusted computers and flickering lights. Liara used its ancient systems to scan the skies, her fingers gliding across controls that responded only to her touch. Leon sat against a wall, loading fresh cells into his rifle.
What now?
She didn't answer at first. The holographic display reflected off her eyes, lines of alien code merging with human text. There is one way to break the bond, she said finally. He looked up sharply. You mean separate us? Yes, but the ritual requires my heart's blood. And your death. Well, Leon said dryly, that's not much of an option. She turned toward him, her expression unreadable. It's the only way to keep you alive when the Sangui fleets arrive. If they capture you, they will bleed the mark from your veins. They'll use you to find me. So your plan is to kill me before they can? My plan, she said firmly, is to make sure you choose your fate. He stood, anger flashing in his voice. You think I'm going to just lie down and die because some alien queen says it's noble? She met his glare unflinching. I think you're the only human who ever looked at me and didn't see a monster. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was raw, honest. Leon turned away, rubbing the back of his neck. You saved my life, Liara. You could have left me to die. That means something, doesn't it? Her voice softened. It means everything. But meaning doesn't stop war. Before he could reply, the ground trembled. The bunker lights flickered. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley, was not from a storm, but from engines. Liara's eyes widened. They found us. Leon peered through a crack in the bunker wall. Across the horizon, Sangui's ships descended like dark angels, black silhouettes against the crimson clouds. Their formation curved inward, surrounding the valley. How many? He asked. Too many. Then we fight. You'll die. I've died before, Leon said, chambering around. Didn't stick. Liara's lips parted, half shock, half admiration. She stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. If you fight, the mark will burn brighter. They'll sense it. Then let them, he said. I'll give them something to sense. The first beam struck the ridge, sending snow and fire into the air. Leon and Liara dashed through the smoke, taking cover behind shattered rocks. He fired at descending Sangui, the plasma bolts glowing silver now, not human silver, but the same hue as her eyes. Liara fought beside him, her claws tearing through armor, movements precise and furious. The air was thick with dust and screams. Leon's body moved on instinct, guided by her through the bond. Each time he faltered, he felt her strength pulse through him, like a second heartbeat pushing him onward. Then a massive explosion lit the sky. The shockwave hurled them both backward. Leon hit the snow hard, gasping, blood in his mouth. He blinked through the haze and saw Liara standing between him and a descending Sangui dreadnought. Her voice echoed in his head. Do not fear, Leon Hayes, you are not my servant. You are my equal. The bond flared. A surge of white and crimson light that split the clouds. The ships froze mid-air as if held by invisible chains. Leon rose slowly, his body glowing faintly, energy rippling off his skin. He didn't understand how, but he could feel them. The enemy, the fear, the rage. And beneath it, the will to protect. Human will. He stepped forward, raised his weapon, and fired. The beam erupted like a sunburst, tearing through the lead ship in one blinding instant. The rest broke formation, retreating in panic. When silence returned, Leon dropped to his knees, exhausted. The snow hissed where his blood hit the ground. Liara caught him before he fell completely, her expression unreadable but fierce. You shouldn't have survived that, she whispered. Guess your blood's good fuel, he murmured. Her gaze softened. You are not fuel. You are the reason I still believe in life. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sky was quiet again, but the bond between them pulsed stronger than ever, not as accident or curse, but as something inevitable. Liara looked toward the heavens, where the veil still bled faint red light. The blood covenant is complete, she said quietly. The galaxy will never forgive us. Leon smiled faintly through the pain. Then let's make them remember why they should have. The desert wind had turned colder, carrying with it the metallic scent of ionized air and the faint hum of distant machinery. Dawn was hours away, but the horizon already shimmered with a strange alien light. A soft violet glow bleeding through the clouds, the residue of something ancient stirring once more. Reed didn't sleep. Neither did she. Seraphine stood at the ridge above the ruins, her silhouette dark and sharp against the violet horizon. The broken towers of the alien citadel below them stood like jagged teeth. Even from this distance, Reed could feel it, a pressure in the air like the world itself holding its breath. He climbed up behind her, boots crunching the ash-smeared sand. You've been quiet since last night, he said softly. Seraphine didn't turn. Her crimson eyes flickered faintly, reflecting the glow from below. This place, she murmured. It's where my father died, or where he decided he should die. Reed frowned. The Emperor? She nodded, her voice barely audible. They called him that. To the galaxy, he was the ruler of the Blood Empire. A conqueror, a monster, a god. To me, he was the shadow that defined my entire existence. And in the end, he was the one who created this ruin. Reed followed her gaze down the slope. The ruins pulsed faintly. Some ancient reactor buried deep beneath the ground still lived, humming like a dying heartbeat. You said he decided to die, Reed said. Not that someone killed him. Seraphine's lips parted as if to answer, but she hesitated. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain, afraid even. Because he isn't gone, she whispered. Not entirely. Before Reed could speak again, the air around them shifted. The violet light flared brighter, and from the ruins below came a sound, deep, resonant, and wrong. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive. A chorus of whispers bled into the wind, overlapping voices and languages Reed didn't recognize. Seraphine's eyes widened. He's waking. The ground trembled. Fractures split across the ancient metal beneath the sand, glowing from within like veins of molten glass. Reed stepped closer to her instinctively, his rifle half raised, though he knew it would mean nothing against what was coming. Then he saw it. A figure rising from the ruins. Not physical at first, but made of light and shadow. A massive regal silhouette with a crown of bone and eyes like dying stars. The Emperor's ghost. Reed's heart pounded. What the hell is that thing? Seraphine's voice broke. My father. The apparition floated above the ruins, its form rippling like smoke. When it spoke, the sound wasn't heard through ears, it vibrated through bone. Daughter of night. Blood of my blood. Why have you returned to the world of the living? Seraphine's breath hitched. Because it's ending, Father. The humans fight to survive, and your children burn the skies. The empire you built is eating itself alive. The ghost turned its hollow gaze toward Reed, and for a moment, Reed felt as if his entire body was being dissected by invisible claws. A human, the voice hissed. You bring the lost to my tomb? Reed forced himself to stand firm. I didn't know this was your tomb, he said. And I didn't come here to worship your memory. There was a faint vibration in the air, something like a chuckle. Courage. Or ignorance. Both taste the same. Seraphine stepped forward, her tone trembling between defiance and grief. He saved me. He didn't have to. And he's not your enemy. The ghost tilted its head. Then perhaps he is yours. You are not meant for compassion, my child. You carry my throne in your blood. Seraphine's fangs flashed, her hands trembling. I carry your curse. Lightning tore across the sky, blood red against the clouds. The ground cracked open beneath them, and for an instant, Reed saw what lay beneath. A massive sarcophagus of glass and metal, pulsing with light. The Emperor's real body, still preserved in some half-living state. The ghost loomed closer. I bound my soul to the core of this world. I linger because I must, because if I fade, so too will our kind. Reed could feel the gravity of those words, a being so powerful that even death couldn't erase him. He looked at Seraphine. Her jaw clenched, tears burning in her eyes. You enslaved us all to your memory, she said. You called it legacy, but it's a cage. The Emperor's form flickered, the air trembling with his rage. You would defy me for a mortal? She didn't answer, but her silence was louder than any scream. Reed stepped forward, ignoring the surge of heat rising from the cracked ground. She's not defying you for me, he said. She's defying what you turned her into, what you turned this whole galaxy into. The ghost roared, a sound that made the stars flicker. Energy surged around them, throwing Reed back. Seraphine screamed, clutching her head as if the voice was clawing into her mind. Then suddenly, everything went still. The ghost froze mid-motion. For a heartbeat, Reed thought it was over, until the Emperor's form began to shrink, condensing into a single point of light. It drifted toward Seraphine's chest and sank inside her. She collapsed. Reed ran to her, catching her before she hit the ground. Her eyes were open but glowing, twin suns burning behind tears. He's inside me now, she whispered, her voice breaking. His will, his power. Reed's breath came sharp. Can you fight it? I don't know. She looked up at him, her lips trembling, her voice almost childlike. But I'll try. For you. The ruins around them began to pulse faster, the ancient machinery now reacting to her presence. The sky flared crimson, and the hum of awakening engines rolled across the wasteland. Reed held her close, feeling her tremble against him. "Then we end this," he said. "Him, his empire, all of it." Seraphine looked at him through the glow of her tears. "You're just a soldier, a human. How can you stand against the blood of a god?" He smiled faintly. "Same way humans always do." One heartbeat at a time, thunder cracked above them. From the heavens, the first of the Emperor's fleets began to descend, drawn by the signal of his resurrection. And beneath the crimson light, the soldier and the half-goddess stood together, two small figures against an empire reborn, ready to defy the ghost of a god and the destiny it carried. The sky over northern Egypt had never looked like that before. It burned, not in fire but in color. Twin suns bled crimson through the clouds, painting the sand in a hue between blood and twilight. The air was electric, trembling with the hum of engines that didn't belong to Earth. Reed stood on the rooftop of what had once been a military outpost. Now it was just rubble, glass, and wind. Behind him the desert stretched endlessly, cracked, scarred, and silent. But above him the stars were alive with motion. Ships, thousands of them. The Emperor's fleets had come. Each one was shaped like a blade, sleek and predatory, moving in patterns that looked almost ritualistic. They descended slowly as if savoring the return of their god's presence. And at the center of it all stood Seraphine. No longer the woman Reed had first met in the ruins, but something far greater and far more terrifying. She hovered a few feet above the sand, her cloak whipping in the heat, her hair catching the light like liquid night. Her eyes glowed with a fierce golden fire, not her natural red, but the color of the Emperor's essence now bound within her. When she spoke, her voice carried two tones, hers and his, layered and haunting. They heard him, she said quietly. The moment his spirit touched mine, they knew. The fleets, the generals, the sleepers in orbit, they all felt the pulse of his will. Reed stared at her, the realization sinking like lead in his stomach. They think he's alive again. Seraphine's gaze flicked toward him, somewhere between pain and resignation. "No, they think I'm him." The wind howled through the ruins. It wasn't just a metaphor. The very atmosphere seemed to warp around her presence. The Emperor's essence was rewriting her at the molecular level. Reed could feel the energy radiating from her, power that could shatter mountains, but also the fragility of someone fighting to stay human through it all. He stepped closer. "Then we use that," he said. "We let them believe. You call them down and we end this before it spreads." Seraphine's smile was faint, bitter. "End this?" "Reed, the Blood Empire spanned 1,000 worlds. You think it dies with a gesture?" "No," he said. "But it begins with one." For a long moment she didn't answer. Then she looked toward the horizon. The descending fleets were positioning above Cairo, the new capital of the alien occupation, renamed centuries ago by their kind as the City of Crimson Suns. A place where the sky never turned blue anymore, only red. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "If the Emperor's ghost calls, the Crimson Court will answer." Reed frowned. "The what?" "They were his 12 warlords," she said. "Each one ruled a world in his name. They were his chosen, his hounds." Her expression hardened. "They won't believe his death was ever final. And when they see me, they'll kneel," Reed said grimly. "Or they'll kill me." A flash of light drew their attention skyward. One of the descending ships, larger than all the rest, broke formation and plummeted toward the desert. It hit the sand miles away, but the shockwave rattled their bones. A few minutes later, Reed saw a line of dark figures approaching through the dust, silhouettes moving like predators. "The first has come," Seraphine murmured. The figures emerged from the storm, tall, armored beings with pale skin and blackened eyes. At their head was a massive warrior draped in crimson silk and bone plating. He carried no weapon. He didn't need one. His presence was a weapon. He bowed slightly before Seraphine, though his voice was laced with suspicion. "My Empress," he said, "the blood of our father burns once more. How have you returned to us?" Reed froze. The words hung heavy. "My Empress." Seraphine's hands trembled for a fraction of a second before she masked it. "The Emperor's will chose a vessel," she said evenly. "I am his echo, his continuation. His command lives through me." The warlord's black eyes flickered toward Reed. "And the human?" Reed stepped forward before she could speak. The human is the one who kept her alive when your kind would have let her die. A ripple of tension spread through the aliens. But the warlord only smiled, slow, cold, serpentine. Bravery, he said. Or stupidity. How amusing that our divine host keeps such fragile company. Seraphine's voice hardened. You will speak of him with respect, Theros. That got his attention. He blinked once. Then he knelt, though his voice was sharp as glass. Forgive me, my empress. It seems even divinity can learn sentiment. As he rose, Reed caught something in his expression. A flicker of calculation, not submission. The kind of look soldiers wore right before betrayal. When Theros turned and gestured, the others behind him began setting up devices. Tall, needle-like spires that pulsed faintly with red light. Reed's instincts screamed. What are they doing? He whispered. Summoning, Seraphine said darkly. The Crimson Court doesn't trust faith alone. They demand proof, the spires began to hum. Rings of energy formed around Seraphine, locking onto her like chains. She gasped as crimson light surged from the devices, trying to draw the Emperor's essence out of her. Reed ran forward, grabbing his rifle, firing at the nearest spire. The rounds barely dented it, but it broke one circuit long enough for Seraphine to regain breath. Her eyes flared gold again, brighter this time. The desert floor cracked beneath her. Enough, she screamed. The spires exploded outward in a burst of light. The shockwave threw everyone back, Reed included. When the dust settled, Theros was kneeling again, but not in mockery this time. In terror. Because what stood before them was no longer Seraphine the fugitive, or even Seraphine the hybrid. It was the Empress. Her aura burned like sunlight through blood. Her shadow stretched for miles, and her voice carried through every frequency of the air. I am Seraphine of the Lost Blood, she declared. Daughter of the Emperor, bearer of his curse and sovereign of my own will. You will kneel, not to his ghost, but to my truth. The court obeyed. Even Theros bowed, though his hands were clenched so tightly his armor cracked. Reed stood a few feet away, watching her. This being who had once been just a strange, wounded woman in the dust, now commanding gods. The sight filled him with awe and dread alike. Seraphine turned to him then, her expression softening just slightly. They'll follow me for now, she said quietly. But they don't understand what I plan to do. Reed frowned. And what's that? She looked toward the horizon where the twin suns blazed crimson. End the Blood Empire once and for all, even if it means ending myself. The wind picked up again. The fleets above shifted, realigning into new formations, obeying her will. The city of crimson suns began to stir below, its towers awakening after centuries, its streets glowing like veins of fire. Reed felt the ground pulse beneath his boots, the hum of ancient power now running through the earth itself. And if the Emperor inside you doesn't let go? He asked quietly. She smiled, a sad, exhausted smile. Then you'll have to do what humans do best, soldier. Finish what the gods started. As the twin suns sank lower, their red light swallowed the city whole. And in that endless glow, the Empress of Blood and the last soldier of Earth prepared for a final reckoning, one that would decide not only the fate of their world, but of every world that still remembered the name of the Emperor. The storm over Cairo lasted 3 days. Not a storm of rain, but of light and sound, the kind that could split clouds and silence cities. It was as if the atmosphere itself struggled to hold the weight of 2 souls inside one body. Reed watched from the shattered remains of an observation tower. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. The entire sky glowed crimson, pulsing like a heartbeat, her heartbeat. Every time Seraphine stirred, the ground trembled. Every time she screamed, the horizon flickered. He could hear her even now, whispering in the distance. Fragments of 2 voices echoing through the static. One pleading, one commanding, hers and the Emperor's. On the 3rd night, the storm broke. The crimson glow faded to a dull, eerie violet. The air cooled, heavy with the scent of ozone and something older, metallic. Reed climbed down from the tower, boots crunching on glass and dust until he found her. Seraphine sat in the middle of what had once been a courtyard. Around her, the concrete was cracked in concentric circles, impact zones from energy waves she hadn't meant to release. Her hair was tangled, her armor torn, her eyes dim but alive. When she looked up, he saw the exhaustion, but also something deeper, fear. You shouldn't be here, she murmured. Reed knelt beside her. Where else would I go? She almost smiled. Anywhere safer. I've been through safer, he said. Didn't like it much. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she leaned her head back, staring at the alien sky. Do you know what's strange, Reed? My kind have seen thousands of worlds. We've broken empires, erased civilizations, rewritten histories, and yet the one species we never understood is yours. He tilted his head. Humans? Yes, her gaze drifted toward him. You fight even when you've lost. You mourn and then you smile again. You bleed, but you still reach for the light. It's illogical. Yeah, Reed said softly. We get that a lot. She turned away. The Emperor's voice says it's weakness, that it's what makes you controllable. But when I look at you, her voice faltered, I wonder if maybe that's what makes you free. Reed didn't answer. He didn't know how. There were no strategies, no commands, no orders that fit this kind of war, the war inside her. He noticed her hands trembling. The veins beneath her skin were faintly glowing gold, the same color as the Emperor's essence. He's pushing harder, isn't he? Reed asked quietly. She nodded once. He's learning, using my emotions as weapons. Every memory, every feeling. He turns it against me. Even you. Me? Seraphine's lips parted in a small broken laugh. He shows me your death in 100 ways. He whispers how easily I could stop caring, how easily I could stop hurting. She clenched her fists. But he doesn't understand what hurting means. He never did. Reed touched her shoulder gently. Then maybe that's what he's afraid of. Her eyes met his, sharp, luminous, wet. Afraid? Yeah, Reed said. Because pain means you still have something left to lose, and something left to fight for. She looked at him for a long moment, and in that silence the storm seemed to die completely. The world was quiet again, the way it gets before dawn. Then far off in the distance came the low rumble of engines. Reed looked up. The horizon was shifting, waves of light moving through the air like the aurora. They're coming, Seraphine said. The fleets? She nodded. The Crimson Court sent out a summons. They've called the rest of the Blood Empire to Earth. They believe the resurrection is complete. Reed's jaw tightened. And when they see you, they'll see their god. Or their executioner. Depends on which of us wins. Her tone was calm, but he could see the tremor in her hands again. She was unraveling piece by piece. The Emperor's will inside her wasn't resting. It was growing, learning, testing the limits of her resistance. He helped her to her feet. Then let's make sure you're still the one in control when they get here. Reed, she whispered. If I fail, you won't. Her eyes softened. You don't know that. He smiled faintly. Don't need to. I just need to believe it. They stood together in the half-light, two silhouettes against the wounded skyline. Below them, the remnants of humanity stirred. Scattered survivors, soldiers, engineers, refugees. They had seen the red storms, felt the tremors, and now they gathered in quiet determination. When Reed descended into the lower levels of the outpost, he found them waiting. Men and women in patched armor, carrying scavenged weapons. Some barely old enough to remember the world before the invasion. Others too old to care anymore. He walked to the center of the group. You've all seen what's happening, he said. You've seen the fleets, the storms, the cities burning red. The world's ending, yeah, but not without us. Someone in the back shouted, What can we do against them? Reed's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. We do what humans always do. We fight smarter. We fight together. We remind them why we survived every war before this one. There was a silence, then slow, growing resolve. One by one, heads lifted. Eyes hardened. Seraphine stood behind him, silent, watching them. Her expression was unreadable. But when their eyes met, he saw it. Pride. Later that night, when the sky flared red again, she approached him as he worked on a comms terminal. They'll call you mad, she said softly. Standing against gods. Reed didn't look up. They always do. But they never forget the ones who try. For a moment, she said nothing. Then almost hesitantly, she reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cold, unnaturally cold, but he didn't pull away. You make it sound so easy, she whispered. It's not, he said. That's what makes it human. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his hand steady her. And in that single, fragile moment, the war, the empire, even the Emperor himself seemed to fade into the background, leaving only two souls bound by defiance. But above them, unseen through the clouds, the fleets were still coming. The Crimson Court had declared Earth a holy ground, the site of the Emperor's rebirth. and billions of alien soldiers now moved through space toward one fragile blue planet, unaware that their god's new form was already planning her rebellion. As dawn broke, Seraphine whispered, "If there's one thing your kind taught me, Reed, it's that being human is the most dangerous condition in the universe." He looked at her, the rising sun catching in her hair, and for a heartbeat, she looked almost mortal again. "Good," he said. "Let's make sure they learn that too." And somewhere deep in the burning core of her mind, the Emperor stirred, restless, angry, afraid, because for the first time in his immortal existence, he realized that his daughter's humanity might destroy him. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 9? The Empress of Ashes next? It will be the climax chapter. Where the Blood Empire arrives, the Emperor tries to seize full control, and Seraphine and Reed lead humanity's last stand. You said yes, ChatGPT said. Chapter 8. The Human Condition. The night was quiet for the first time in months. No drones humming in the clouds, no plasma streaks lighting the horizon, just silence and the slow, steady heartbeat of a recovering world. Reed sat on the remnants of a stone wall overlooking what used to be Chicago. Now grass sprouted through cracked highways and alien trees pulsed faintly with red bioluminescence, a reminder that even in ruin, life refused to give up. Seraphine stood beside him, cloaked in silver armor that shimmered faintly under the pale earth moon. Her eyes, those impossible eyes, no longer burned with the cold fire of command. They carried something gentler now, something uncertain. Humanity. For days she hadn't spoken much, since the Emperor's ghost had revealed the truth, that she was the one destined to rule not through blood but through choice. Seraphine had been quiet, thoughtful, almost fragile. Reed didn't know if she mourned her father, her empire, or the idea of herself. He broke the silence first. You ever wonder why humans keep fighting even when we know we'll lose? Seraphine's gaze drifted across the ruined skyline. Because you are incapable of surrendering to despair. It's inefficient, irrational. Then she smiled faintly. Beautiful. Reed chuckled, rubbing a hand over his scarred jaw. That's one word for it. We just call it stubbornness. She turned toward him, her eyes softening. I have studied thousands of civilizations. I have conquered worlds filled with logic and order, but none of them ever made me question what living meant until I met you. Her confession wasn't a weapon, wasn't a seduction. It was raw, uncertain, and it hit Reed harder than any plasma bolt. He looked away, the faint wind carrying the smell of dust and ozone. We're not perfect. We kill, we lie, we make a mess of everything. You've seen it yourself. I have, she admitted. And yet you still build. You still love. Even when you know time will take it all away. Her voice trembled on that last word. Love. Reed felt his throat tighten. He wanted to say something, anything, but words were fragile things when the universe itself seemed to be watching. The stars above flickered, faint crimson glows pulsing like veins in the sky. He knew those weren't stars. They were her fleet. Still orbiting, still waiting. Your people think you're dead, he said quietly. Yes. Seraphine's expression hardened slightly. And they must continue to think so, until they're ready for something different. Reed frowned. Different? A galaxy without thrones, she whispered. Without chains of blood or hunger. A galaxy built on choice and not on fear. My father's empire thrived on dominance, but it's dying now. I intend to let it. Her words stunned him. The woman who had once commanded entire star systems, now speaking like a philosopher staring at her own extinction. Reed couldn't decide if he admired her or pitied her. He leaned back, letting his hand brush against hers. It was cold and unnaturally so, but she didn't pull away. You sound human. I am learning, she said softly. From you. The moment hung between them, fragile and eternal. A soldier and an empress. A mortal and an immortal. And yet something unspoken tethered them. The shared pain of being alive in a broken universe. Do you regret coming here? Reed asked. No, she replied immediately. Do you? He smiled faintly. Ask me again when we're not sitting in an alien graveyard. That made her laugh, a sound like glass breaking underwater. It was beautiful and strange, and Reed found himself laughing too. For a few seconds, the weight of empires and wars fell away, replaced by the simplest truth of all. They were just two souls trying to understand each other. As dawn crept across the horizon, a faint light touched her pale skin. She didn't flinch from it anymore. Your son, she murmured. It feels different now. Hurts less? Reed asked. No, she whispered. It reminds me that everything burns eventually. Even us. The warmth between them shifted. Not romance yet, but something purer. Understanding. Seraphine took off one of her silver gauntlets and placed her bare hand against his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heart. The human condition, she said quietly. It's the courage to keep beating, even when you know it will stop one day. Reed placed his hand over hers. Yeah, that's about right. She closed her eyes. For the first time, Seraphine, the Empress of the Crimson Empire, allowed herself to simply exist. Not as a conqueror, not as a savior, but as a being trying to feel what it meant to be alive. Above them, the crimson suns of her fleets began to fade one by one. Across the sky, distant ships turned and slipped away into the void, obeying an unspoken command from their Empress. She had chosen Earth, not to rule it, but to learn from it. And Reed, the last surviving soldier of the Terran Defense Front, finally realized that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology or their armies. It was this, their ability to turn even monsters into dreamers. He smiled as the first real sunlight touched the city ruins. Welcome to the human race, he murmured. Seraphine opened her eyes, and for the first time they reflected not starlight, but dawn. The world had begun to breathe again. Grass had grown between the ruins. Water ran clear in the rivers, and for the first time in years, there was laughter in the refugee camps that dotted the edges of what was once New York. The crimson sky had faded back to blue, though sometimes if you stared long enough, faint lines of alien light still drifted across the upper atmosphere, reminders that the stars were watching. Reed stood on the balcony of the United Nations complex, now half rebuilt with alien alloy and human stone. Below, human engineers worked beside pale-skinned alien artisans, building something new from the ashes of invasion. Cooperation, the impossible dream of diplomats and philosophers, was taking form, one fragile piece at a time. But he knew peace was never simple. Not when the ghosts of war still lingered in every mind. Behind him he heard the soft, graceful footsteps he'd come to recognize instantly. Seraphine, no longer armored, no longer cloaked in command. She wore a long coat of woven black silk, her white hair unbound, her once red eyes now glowing faintly violet. Not human, not alien anymore, something between. Your world heals fast, she said, her voice soft but still laced with that regal calm. He didn't turn. Humans are stubborn. We'd rather rebuild the same wall 1,000 times than let it fall. A faint smile tugged at her lips. You keep saying that, stubbornness, as if it were both your curse and your strength. It is, Reed said, finally facing her. It's what kept us alive long enough to meet you. Seraphine looked past him toward the skyline. The horizon shimmered faintly red. They're coming, Reed stiffened. Who? My people, she said quietly. Not the remnants of the fleet I dismissed. The High Conclave. The old blood that never accepted my father's death. They've waited in the dark, letting me play this little rebellion on your world. Now they mean to end it. Reed's pulse quickened. Then we need to move. Get you out, no. She turned sharply, her tone final. Running would mean I'm still the same creature they crowned. I won't flee again. Not from them. Not from what I've become. He stepped closer, frustration and fear colliding in his chest. Seraphine, they'll kill you. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. Then I die as something my kind will never understand. I'm free. He couldn't argue with that. He hated her resolve, admired it, feared it all at once. The woman standing before him wasn't just an empress. She was an idea. The living contradiction of power and compassion. And Reed knew ideas like that either changed the world or burned trying. Then I'm staying with you, he said. You shouldn't. Won't matter. He smiled faintly. You turned my planet upside down. You think I'm gonna let you face your own species alone? Something flickered behind her eyes, an emotion raw and unguarded. You would die for me? Reed hesitated. Maybe not for what you were, but for what you're trying to be. Yeah, I would. For a long time, neither spoke. The city hummed softly below them, a new heartbeat born from two worlds stitched together. And then, in a single moment that defied every law of her people's cold empire, Seraphine reached out and touched his cheek, gently, as though afraid he might vanish. "Do you know what you've done to me?" She whispered. "You've infected me, Reed, with hope." He almost laughed. "Good. About time someone did." Before he could say more, the air trembled. The sky dimmed, and from the horizon, streaks of crimson light fell toward the city like meteors. Massive, elegant, terrifying. The warships of the High Conclave descended in perfect silence. People screamed below. Anti-air batteries came alive, targeting systems blinking. But Reed shouted into his comms, "Hold your fire!" "Hold!" Seraphine raised her hand and the ships halted mid-air, frozen in formation above the sea. The atmosphere quivered as her voice echoed not through sound but through thought. Every human, every alien felt it in their minds. "I am Seraphine Val-Drakkar, daughter of the Crimson Throne. I no longer claim dominion over the stars." The Conclave's ships responded instantly, crimson symbols flaring across the sky. Then came the reply, a booming psychic wave that cracked windows and shattered clouds. "Then you are an abomination." Reed grabbed her arm as blood trickled from her nose. "Seraphine, stop! They're killing you!" She shook her head, eyes glowing fiercely. "They need to see what we've become." She opened her mind and wide, unguarded. And suddenly the invaders saw everything. Her memories of the war, of Reed, of laughter in the ruins, of pain and forgiveness and sunlight on her skin. Every emotion she had once buried beneath the weight of power spilled into the collective consciousness of her species. The fleet hesitated. For the first time in their history, the vampire lords of the Crimson Empire felt what it was like to be human. The crimson lights above the city began to flicker. Ships wavered, breaking formation. Across the sky, the Conclave's command structure trembled under the impossible weight of empathy. Then, the central flagship, the Obsidian Crown, descended slowly, its hull reflecting both alien light and Earth's sun. A deep voice boomed from within. "You defy the bloodline." Seraphine stood straighter, voice unwavering. "I redefine it." Reed's hand brushed the sidearm at his belt, but she stopped him with a look. This wasn't his battle. This was hers, the test of whether the galaxy would burn or bloom. The massive ship's doors opened, revealing an elder, a pale, ancient figure with red veins glowing beneath translucent skin. His eyes locked on Seraphine with centuries of contempt. "You would throw away eternity for a mortal," she smiled faintly. "No, I would share it." The elder's expression cracked. Confusion, rage, fear. And then the ship's energy field began to pulse violently. Reed lunged forward, pulling her down as a beam of crimson light shot toward the ground. It never hit. Because at that moment, Seraphine raised her hand, and the entire beam disintegrated into dust. Her veins burned white, her eyes like twin novas. The voice of the Conclave faltered. One by one, ships began to withdraw. The elder's voice roared in their minds, commanding them to fight, but none obeyed. They had felt her truth. They could no longer follow a god who had forgotten how to feel. When the last ship vanished into the atmosphere, Reed realized he was shaking. What did you just do?" Seraphine staggered, her power flickering like dying light. "I made them. Remember." He caught her as she fell. Her pulse was faint, her breath shallow. "Stay with me," he said, voice cracking. Her lips curved into a small, peaceful smile. "I am with you. Always." She closed her eyes, and the crimson light across the horizon dimmed to pale gold. When she awoke, days later, the world was different again. Humanity had not just survived, they had been chosen as the example of something greater. Across distant systems, rebellion spread through the empire that once enslaved galaxies, not for conquest, for freedom. And Seraphine, the woman who had once ruled through fear, now ruled through faith. As she stood beside Reed atop the rebuilt citadel, she whispered, "Perhaps this is what the heart is for, to defy the stars." Reed looked at her, the faintest smile on his face. "Guess we both did." The universe was quiet again, not the silence of death but of peace long overdue. The crimson storms that had haunted Earth's skies had faded into faint auroras, shimmering silver and violet, a dance between two worlds that once tried to destroy each other. The air carried no scent of blood or ash anymore, just rain, just life. Reed stood on the edge of the rebuilt Citadel Gardens, overlooking a city reborn. New towers rose where ruins once stood, shaped by both human hands and alien design. Their surfaces shimmered with a faint bioluminescent pulse, a hybrid technology that grew rather than decayed. It was as if Earth had begun to dream in color again. The people called it the Age of Dawn. Behind him, he heard soft footsteps, familiar now, grounding. Seraphine walked toward him, wrapped in a flowing dark cloak embroidered with threads that shimmered like starlight. She no longer wore the crown of the Empress. It sat locked away in a museum beneath the new city. The galaxy didn't need thrones anymore. It needed witnesses. You still can't sleep? She asked softly. Reed smiled faintly. Guess old soldiers never do. Too many ghosts. Seraphine stood beside him, her silver hair brushing the edge of his shoulder. Then perhaps we must learn to live with them. Not as burdens, but as memories that keep us human. He chuckled. You keep saying us like you're one of us now. She looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting the lights of the city below. Aren't I? He couldn't argue with that. She had bled for Earth, defied her empire, and nearly died to prove that compassion wasn't weakness. If that wasn't human, nothing was. Below, children laughed in the streets, both human and alien, indistinguishable except for faint patterns of light on their skin. The first generation born after the war, a living symbol of what had once been impossible. They don't even see the difference anymore, Reed said quietly. They aren't supposed to, Seraphine replied. That's the point. A faint wind rustled the leaves around them. The alien flora she had planted weeks ago had taken root beside Earth's trees, their red veins pulsing softly in rhythm with the beating of the human heart. Even nature was learning the language of unity. Seraphine reached into her cloak and pulled out a small, smooth piece of crystal, shaped like a fang, faintly glowing from within. The last relic of my father, she said, holding it out. It carries the genetic code of our line. If I release it into the void, the Crimson Empire will end forever. Reed frowned. And if you don't? Then my people will return, one day guided by the same arrogance that nearly destroyed everything. He studied her expression. What do you want to do? Seraphine looked up at the stars, her stars, and for the first time there was no longing, no hunger, just peace. I want them to remember what we became, not what we were. She walked to the edge of the garden, lifted the crystal, and whispered something Reed couldn't understand. Words not meant for humans, ancient and sacred. Then she let it go. The crystal floated upward, caught by the soft wind, and began to dissolve into countless motes of crimson light. They scattered across the sky, merging with the aurora, vanishing into the cosmos. Reed stepped beside her, his voice low. You just erased your entire bloodline, she smiled faintly. No, I set it free. For a long moment, neither spoke. The night stretched endlessly, stars shimmering like 1,000 silent witnesses. Then Reed said, what happens now? She turned toward him, her gaze calm. Now we live. He raised an eyebrow. That simple? That difficult, she corrected, her smile deepening. They stood there together as the dawn began to rise, gold bleeding into blue, the sky alive with the pulse of a reborn world. Somewhere far above, a distant satellite captured the image, a soldier and a queen standing side by side beneath a new sun. That image would become the most famous in human history, the dawn handshake, they'd call it. The moment when two species ended an age of darkness, not with war, but with understanding. But for Reed and Seraphine, it wasn't history. It was just life, messy, uncertain, beautiful. Later that day, as the city celebrated the anniversary of peace, Reed found himself standing in the crowd, watching children play under banners of both empires. Someone handed him a cup of something sweet and strange, alien wine, glowing faintly pink. He took a sip, grimaced, and laughed. Humanity would adapt. They always did. A voice behind him said, You never could handle our drinks. He turned, Seraphine, dressed not in regalia, but in a simple cloak, blending in with everyone else. Old habits, he said, grinning. She tilted her head. I like it. You remind me that perfection is overrated. He offered the cup. Want to prove it? She took it, sipped, and smiled. Terrible. They both laughed. And for a moment, no empires, no wars, no ghosts. Just two people who had somehow rewritten the fate of stars by simply refusing to give up on each other. As the night fell again, Seraphine looked up. Do you think they'll remember us? Reed followed her gaze to the stars. Maybe, but that's not what matters. Then what does? That they remember why we did it, she nodded softly. For the light, he echoed, above them. The auroras shimmered again, and if you looked closely, you could almost see their reflection in the heavens. A soldier's outstretched hand, a vampire's pale one meeting it halfway, and the faint spark where they touched. A fist bump that started a new age. And somewhere in that endless cosmic expanse, where gods and monsters once ruled, the stars themselves remembered.